Hello guys, I am Arvind and in this lecture I am going to discuss recursion in C programming. So let's go ahead and we'll discuss. So what is recursion? So when a function calls itself is known as recursion. And now moving on to the next topic, and that is the types of recursion. So actually we can divide recursion into two types. So the first type of recursion is direct recursion and the second type of recursion is indirect recursion or mutual recursion. So let's go ahead and we'll discuss direct recursion. So when a function calls itself, it is known as direct recursion, and direct recursion is a one-step recursive call. So the function makes a recursive call inside its own function body. So here is the example of direct recursion. So basically we are defining a function, and in this function we are calling function again in this function definition. So it is basically an example of direct recursion. So let's go ahead and we'll discuss indirect recursion. So this is basically a two-step recursive call, and the function calls another function to make a recursive call. So let's take an example of indirect recursion here. So this is the example where a function 1 calls function 2 and then function 2 calls function 1. So this is the example of indirect recursion. So I hope it is clear to you. And now guys, I will show you the working of recursion in C programming. So let's open up the Turbo C++ compiler. So guys, now I am going to find out the factorial of a given number using recursion, and I am using a parameter of integer type, and the return type of this function factorial is unsigned long int. And now in the main function I have declared two variables n and r, and now I am taking input for variable n by using a scanf function, and I will pass the value of n to the factorial function. When we call this function factorial, the value of n will be passed to x, and then we can check these conditions. So if the value of x will be 1, it will return 1, otherwise it will execute this statement. So this statement will be f equals to x into factorial x minus 1. So it is basically an example of recursion. So as we know that when a function calls itself is known as recursion, so here this factorial function is calling this factorial function again. So that's why it is an example of recursion. So guys, let's take an example. So suppose if I have entered 5 for variable n, then I will pass the value of 5 to this factorial function, and when we call this function factorial, the value of n will be passed to the definition. So it will pass to variable x. So this is the concept of call by value, and here in this function definition of factorial, if the value of x is 1, then it will return 1. So as we know that the value of x is 5 that we have passed from the main function, so this condition is false, so it will go to the else block and then calculate this instruction. So it will be like 5 into factorial 5 minus 1, that will be 4. So it will be like 5 into factorial 4. So now we are calling this function factorial with having value 4, and that value will be passed to x, and then it will again check this condition. So 4 equals to 1. So now this condition is false. Then it will again go to the next instruction. So it will be like 5 into 4 into factorial 4 minus 1, that will be 3. So basically now we are calling this factorial again with the value 3. So then 3 value will be passed to x. Then it will again check this condition. So obviously it will be false, and then it will go to this instruction. So now this time it will be 5 into 4 into 3 and factorial 2. So now we are calling this function factorial again with having value 2. So that value 2 will be passed to x, and then we will check this condition again, that will be false obviously, and then we will go to the else block, and this statement will be like 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into factorial 2 minus 1 means 1. So it will be like 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into factorial 1. So now we are calling this function with having value 1, and that value will be passed to x, and then this condition will be true. so it will return 1. So now this statement will be like 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, that will be 120, and that value will be assigned to f. And now we are returning this value to the main function, that will be stored to R, and then we can print the value of factorial by this print function. So now if I run this code, it is basically requesting to enter a number. So the number is 5, and now the factorial is 120. So I hope it is clear to you, and thank you so much guys for watching this video. Just in case you liked it, do not forget to like and subscribe. I will see you then in the next video.